Hello, I'm Joan Landis. I'm happy to be with you again today. So today for the Smart Start lesson, we're going to understand things that are very important at any time you want to make a change in your life and become more resilient. Anytime we're thinking about doing changes, we go through stages of change that help us understand whether we're really ready to take action or not. We might think we're ready to take action, but maybe there's a part of us that's really not. So there was two very famous researchers, Prochaska and DiClemente, who had studied people who were in the process of making big changes in their lives, substance abusers and things like that. And they noticed that there are different stages of change before people are actually ready to take action or make big changes in their lives. So let's talk about those. The first stage of change is called pre-contemplation. Okay, so pre-contemplation, what does that mean? That means you are not even thinking about it. You are just in a state of kind of ignorance is bliss. So if we're talking about quitting smoking, maybe you're like, what? I don't have a problem smoking, or cigarettes aren't bad, or nobody cares, that kind of thing. And that's pre-contemplation. You are not even thinking about change at all. The next stage is called contemplation. Contemplation is where you actually are thinking there might be a problem. So if you're, trying to stop smoking, you might say, I am spending a lot of money on this. It is really bad for my health. I cough all the time. I don't smell the way I want to smell. Maybe this isn't the best idea. Maybe someday I really ought to quit. Okay, so that would be the stage called contemplation, where you know that there's a problem, but you're not quite sure you want to do anything about it yet. Okay, so anytime we're making changes in our life, we kind of need to know where we are so that we don't expect ourselves to do too much and then be really disappointed. This is also extremely important if you want a loved one in your life to make changes, okay? If they are not ready yet, then it doesn't do much good at all to nag them, bribe them, cry, scream. It really doesn't. They're just not there yet. So if someone's in pre-contemplation or contemplation, really it's one of those things where you're not going to be able to do too terribly much to affect that. Now a therapist can, but really if you're a mom or a dad or whatever, don't try to take that one on. If someone isn't exactly ready, it could just ruin the relationship to try to cajole or beat them into it. So the third stage of change is called planning. Now planning is where you actually know you have some kind of challenge that you want to overcome, and you start thinking about, how would I do that? How would I stop smoking? Would I get a patch? Would I go cold turkey? Would I join a group? Would I get something online? Would I use gum? What would I do? And so that's just the planning stage. Maybe you start researching, maybe you start talking to people. And planning is a really good place to be because that means you're actually taking some kind of action to move forward. Anytime we can take action, that's always a good proactive place to be. So that's planning. Now after planning is when you actually take action. And that stage is when you put that plan into effect. So for instance, with the smoking example, maybe you get all of the cigarettes out of your house and you burn them or bury them or flush them down something. And then you get all the ashtrays out of the way, you remove all your triggers, you get a good supply of Chantix, you talk to somebody, you have an accountability buddy, you go to a group, you set goals. And so that's where you actually take action, where you're saying, this is it, this is the day, we're going for it. Okay, so that's a cool place to be too. If you're there and that's why you're here at Resilified, fantastic. If you're not quite there yet and you're here at Resilified, no problem. Because Resilified itself, just watching the videos may help scoot you along to the part where you're ready to plan and take action, okay? All right, so say you've taken action, but then we have a step called lapsing. What does that mean? That means that since you are a human, that you will make mistakes. that when you want to change direction in your life, unlike a machine, that humans, when here's this direction that they're going and they want to change direction, that they'll start changing like this, but then they'll have a lapse, okay? And then it'll have like a little setback, all right? And that lapse can be anything that gets you off track. And so, for instance, with cigarettes, maybe it would be that you went and bought a pack of cigarettes. Okay, that would be a lapse. Maybe you smoked a cigarette. That would be a lapse. And so that kind of thing, even maybe you enjoyed the thought of getting a cigarette and you let yourself enjoy that thought. That could even be a lapse, right? Where you're off your program. And so the question with lapsing is, what do you do with it? When we lapse, which is absolutely normal for humans, when we lapse, what are we going to do with it? Do we take that as a signal that we are a failure, that this isn't working, and that we just should give up? No. When we do that, that is called a relapse. A relapse means you go back to ground zero, back to square one, back to home base, and you just kind of fall off the bandwagon and give up. When you relapse, that means you're often in pre-contemplation because you kind of give up. Now, lapsing is normal. And that's one of the most important things I want to share with you, is to understand that unlike machines, humans will have lapses. But the important thing is, what do we do with that? Okay, so when we lapse, we want to understand that if we beat ourselves up and we say, oh my gosh, you're so weak, you're such a jerk, I knew you could never do it, you don't have any discipline, you have no willpower. Or if you blame other people, Susie made me do it, or that guy just, took me to this party. Yeah, none of that is good. No bueno, okay? What you need to do in that instance is you acknowledge the lapse, you own it, and you say, yep, I made some lousy choices. I made some choices that were not the healthiest, okay? And yet, there were some things that I did that were good, even in making the bad choice. Maybe I didn't fall all the way off the bandwagon. Maybe I stopped myself. Maybe I had less than I would have normally. Maybe I called somebody after I had my lapse and I interrupted the cycle so I wasn't back to square one. And so what you want to do when you have a lapse, and we'll talk about this in later courses, but what you want to do is not beat yourself up. Do not go there. When we berate ourselves and scold ourselves, it actually makes us less resilient. Resilient people do not beat themselves up to motivate themselves. Did you know that? Is that news to you? Resilient people they're actually very loving and kind to themselves, very supportive. They demand things of themselves, but they don't punish, berate, scold, any of that icky stuff. Because when we do that to ourselves, when we tell ourselves those things, our brain believes it. We do not want to program our brain with those things. So we want to stay on the positive. Look for the good things that you did, even in the lapse. And then you go back to the planning stage and you say, what do I have to do now? And you say, okay, I guess I can't go out at 10 o'clock at night by myself to the 7-Eleven. That's a weak point for me. I just think I have to grab some cigarettes. So that's the change in my plan. And I'm going to change that plan. And then you work your plan. And then you take action. And you keep going. And then you'll find another little lapse. Totally normal. It just shows you that you have another door that you need to close and things that you're learning about yourself. So don't fear lapses. Prepare for them and learn from them. That's the two things. If you prepare for it and you learn from it, then lapsing is just a normal process of change. Don't panic. And then the last step is, if you do relapse and you're back to square one, okay, so you're there. You know what to do now. You know that you can go contemplate, say, okay, what do I do now? Make some plans, take action, and start the process over again. The main thing I want you to understand from this is that when someone is ready to change, then that's when we can actually encourage them and support them in the process of changing. Until then, we don't want to push too hard directly. We can, show a good example. We can express faith in them. We can express our love for them. We can give them things to read, things like that. You can certainly watch things on Resilified and understand how the process works. But for some people, they kind of need to hit rock bottom before they're really there. They need to have kind of a reason to kind of get off home base. So anyway, I hope this is helpful for you. I want you to understand that lapsing is a normal part of change. You don't have to fear it, that you can learn from it, and it can actually make you a stronger person, okay? So for this week, for your action item, I would really like you to just notice maybe one or two things that you want to change in your life, okay? A couple of things that you want to change, and just write down where you think you are on the stages of change. Is it like, oh no, I'm just fine with that, there's no problem? Hopefully you're not there because you've actually decided that you want to think about it. Or are you contemplating? Okay, I'm thinking about it, not making any plans, but I am thinking about it. Or number 3, I am planning. Yep, I've researched ways, I've talked to people, I've looked things up on the internet. Or are you taking action and you'd like some more support with that? Or maybe you lapsed. Maybe you've had a lapse. Have you beaten yourself up and gotten discouraged? Or do you know what to do with that lapse? Or maybe you're in the middle of a relapse, right? So at any of those stages, being with us on Resilified is really, really a useful place to be. And we can support you in wherever you are and wherever you want to go. So hope you have fun with that this week. Again, pick 2 things that you'd like to change and just notice where you are on those stages of change. And then visit with us on the forums and tell us how you're doing.